Donald Trump just announced huge tariffs on dozens of countries, and as a result, Apple stock is down 10%, marking the single worst drawdown since March 16th, 2020, which you know what happened then. So why is this so terrible for Apple? What can Tim Cook do about it? And finally, how is this gonna affect you, the consumer? I'm gonna answer all those questions in this video, so let's get started with why this is so bad for Apple. Well, going back to 2018, Trump announced 20% tariffs on China, but thankfully Tim Cook met with Trump and made a deal to have Apple exempted from that tariff, which was great for Apple. And since then, US and China trade relations starting to really heat up, so Apple strategically started shifting their production away from China to countries like Vietnam, where they make 20% of Apple's iPads, 90% of Apple's wearables like the Apple Watch, up to 65% of AirPods, and now they're making more Macs in Vietnam. But the issue is that Trump just announced a 46% tariff on Vietnam, completely screwing Apple and many other companies like Nike and Lululemon, who have tons of factories in Vietnam. And then there are, of course, other countries where Apple has diverted supply chains from China, like to Malaysia, where a lot of Mac studios are made, but now it's facing a 24% tariff, and everything from China itself now faces a total of 56% tariff, making just everything worse for Apple. But it doesn't stop there, because on May 2nd, Trump is closing a tariff loophole called de minimis tax exemption, which allowed overseas shipments bound for American businesses and consumers valued under $800 per person per day to be completely tax exempt. And guess how many of Apple's products are under $800? Well, we have the $799 iPhone 16, we have the iPhone 16e, the iPhone 15, every pair of AirPods, the base Mac Mini, the base iPad, iPad Mini, iPad Air, every Apple Watch up to the Apple Watch Ultra 2, every HomePod, and so many more products. They now have a tariff applied as of May 2nd. So what exactly is a tariff? How does it work? And how does it make things more expensive for Apple and for you, the consumer? No, you're not gonna have to pay $937 for a $750 MacBook Air if you order one from Best Buy, like this ex-user is saying. It does not work that way, so don't worry. It's actually gonna be Apple who's paying the bill to make your experience better, to not have a phone call from US Customs saying, hey, you ordered AirPods, we're not gonna ship it to you unless you pay this bill. Right here is a great example of how it works from Molson Hart on X, who sells toys on Amazon and recently purchased 2 containers full of toys from China valued at $100,000. Even though he made the order before Trump came into office, he was still charged $20,000 on his order. Why? Well, because the tariff gets applied when the shipment hits US soil at US Customs. So in order to get a shipment, he had to pay 20% or else they would not release it at US Customs. So of course, since he already spent $100K on the shipment, he has no choice but to pay the $20K tariff. But he's actually very lucky, because if that shipment came in today, he would have had to pay $56,000 because Trump just increased the tariff up to 56% from China. That would instantly make that shipment unprofitable, guaranteed. So his only choice with those toys is to raise the price massively in order to make a profit, which means higher prices for you, the consumer. So with that said, if you're trying to buy something like toys or anything else like Apple products, you better make your purchase today, because we don't know the extent of how high prices have to get increased for things like Apple products. So use the links down below if you want to order something today. And now let's look at it from an Apple perspective and how the tariffs affect Apple products. Let's say you buy a pair of $250 AirPods Pro, and let's say Apple shipped it directly from Vietnam to your door, which, by the way, this is not how it works, but let's say the value is $250. Someone would have to pay the $115 tariff bill when it hits US Customs. Otherwise, they're not gonna let it go through. And of course, Apple would end up paying the bill because they're not gonna make you pay it, otherwise it's a terrible buying experience. People would just say, no, I ain't paying it, so Apple would have to pay it. Instead, this is how it really works. Apple orders the AirPods Pro to ship directly from Vietnam to their own US factory before being shipped to your door. This way, they only have to pay the 46% tariff on the actual cost of goods for Apple, for the AirPods themselves, instead of the full intended retail price. So let's say it costs Apple $80 to make those AirPods. They would only have to pay $36.80 to get them into the USA, but that is actually a really big deal since it cuts into their profit margins. Ming-Chi Kuo estimated that Apple's overall profit margins could drop by 8.5 to 9% due to tariffs if they chose not to raise prices at all, which is a massive blow, and that's why the stock is down 10%. So what can Apple do about it? Well, Kuo gave us 5 different options. Option number 1 is that Apple can boost production in countries like India, where there are lower tariffs, especially since India announced that they are considering cutting tariffs on the US in order to get Trump to drop the tariffs for India. So Apple can basically move more and more production to India to help save some money. Option 2 is that Apple could raise the prices of their high-end products like iPhone Pro models, since high-end consumers are relatively more accepting of price increases. But of course, there is an issue with this. With higher prices, demand goes down and sales go down, especially if we end up going into a recession. Option 4 is to reduce trade-in values to partially offset costs of tariffs. But of course, the issue with this is if you're trying to trade in your old iPhone and Apple just cut the trade-in value in half, you might change your mind and not buy a new iPhone. So of course, that means less sales for Apple. And option 5 is for Apple to put even greater pressure on its suppliers to cut costs. The issue with this is that Apple has already been doing this for a while, pushing down costs as much as they could, but of course Apple can do it even more, especially if a country is scared that Apple is gonna drop them. Either way, this is a huge issue for Apple, and it seems like prices will simply just have to go up regardless of what Apple can do, because these tariffs are no joke. There's really no way to get around raising the prices. So to sum up this video, these tariffs are bad for Apple and so many other companies. And no, you're not gonna be paying them directly because the company is gonna take the hit, which means they're likely gonna have to raise prices of all of their products. So if you are planning on buying some Apple products soon, use the links down below because you don't wanna risk the prices going up. We have no idea when Apple would raise prices or if they would find other methods or take the hit themselves. We don't know, so it's best to probably buy stuff right now. Use the links down below. By the way, thanks for watching. Subscribe above, check out one of those 2 videos right there, and we'll see you in the next video.